Welcome back, dearest customer. I'm Charlize, and here in the Learning Cafe, we make mathematics as artistic as our latte art. Unfortunately, this will be the last drink for our cafe for now. So before you move along to our cafe's other tabs, may I interest you in something light and sweet? Well, I have just the right drink for you. Why don't you try out our strawberries and cream frappuccino with an intensity of only 2, which is as light as our last lecture about patterns and isometries? So let's dive right in. So, as per usual, let's start with our very first ingredient. In this case, we'll be dealing with symmetry. I'm sure that most, if not all of you, are already familiar with the word symmetry, right? So, symmetry is when a shape or an object can be equally divided into two parts, with both parts being exactly identical as a mirror image of the other half, like this. So, to find the two symmetrical halves of the same shape, the symmetry line, or the imaginary line that divides the shape in the middle is visualized. With this, regardless of the shape being moved, rotated, or flipped, the object still remains symmetrical. Okay, so now that we know what a symmetry is, would you happen to know what an isometry is? I know it may be quite unfamiliar. So, what exactly is an isometry? Well, to briefly define an isometry in mathematics, an isometry is described as a geometric transformation that changes a shape or a figure's position without necessarily changing its segments nor its form. Here, when dealing with isometric transformations, we have the initial image, called as the pre-image, which then undergoes the transformation into the final shape, or the image itself. In this case, the element is a coffee cup, and all that's done to it is that it is flipped upside down. So to give you a little visualization in isometric transformations, we have three different kinds: translation, rotation, and reflection, as you can see here. Starting with translation, this simply involves sliding the shape in any direction, whether horizontally or vertically. Next, we have rotation. Here it involves turning the shape along a fixed point of symmetry, or using one of its vertices to make a figure that is simply turned a few degrees. Lastly, we have reflection, where we take a line of symmetry like this, then flip the shape over the line so that the new shape becomes a mirror image of the original figure. Not too difficult, right? I told you this lesson will be quite a breeze. Now let's move on to our next ingredient, which is all about patterns. Of course, there are a lot of different patterns. However, for the sake of this drink, we'll only be covering the rosette and the frieze patterns. Starting with the rosette patterns, from its name itself, they kind of resemble rose petals, don't they? So to be specific, a rosette pattern involves the rotation and or reflection of one motif or element, which will then be repeated in a continuous pattern along a singular, usually circular shape. Under this type of pattern, we have two types: those that have cyclic symmetry and those that have dihedral symmetry. For shapes that are cyclically symmetrical, they involve a consistent rotation and repetition of the same motif, like this, along the figure's central point, having no mirror lines like this image. Here, the element simply goes around the shape in a circular way. As for those that have dihedral symmetry, they also have rotational symmetry, but instead of going around the center point like this one, the repeated element branches out from the middle, producing mirror lines just like this image, although there are a few elements that are repeated. Here we have the center, then the elements branch out here. Moving on to the second pattern, we have frieze patterns. Although its name sounds a bit more complicated, I'm pretty sure that you have seen this type of pattern at least once, and I believe you'll remember once you see some examples, because these patterns are commonly seen in architecture, especially in old pieces like this. Now, to further define what a frieze pattern is, they basically involve an infinite strip of a consistent repeating motif, like this one where it is repeated infinitely, which is why this pattern is also called a border pattern or an infinite strip pattern. So although these patterns are usually only presented in a finite way, like in this rectangle, where we only see a portion of it, frieze patterns actually extend infinitely in two directions, either vertically or horizontally. So in these two examples, they both extend horizontally. So now that we've put together all these topics or all the ingredients for your drink, we now have your completed strawberries and cream frappuccino. But don't you worry, the Learning Cafe doesn't end here, because you are more than welcome to explore our fun little games and trivia we have for you. We hope you enjoyed staying with us just as much as we love serving you. See you again. Until next time.